Hi, I'm Aveline, and my fiancé left me on the side of the road during a blizzard because I dared to ask about the $50,000 missing from my account. He said I could either kneel and apologize or disappear. I disappeared, but not before hitting record. And the next morning, what should have been my wedding turned into his public reckoning. My parents called it a misunderstanding. His sister said I was dramatic, but you tell me, was I supposed to stay quiet after what he did? Because this story, it doesn't end at the altar. It begins there. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are right now? Drop it in the comments below. I want to know who's listening and who's ready to hear what happens next. The snow hadn't stopped since early afternoon. By the time we were on the highway, the world outside looked like it had disappeared, just white swirling into white. The wipers screeched across the windshield every few seconds, barely clearing enough for us to see the lines on the road. I sat in the passenger seat, hands clenched together on my lap, watching the road signs vanish into darkness. Lucien's hand was firm on the wheel, his jaw tight. We'd driven this route dozens of times, but tonight felt different. It wasn't the blizzard, it was the silence between us. I turned my head slowly, heart thudding, and asked the question I'd been holding in for weeks. "Lucien, what happened to the 50,000? He didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Instead, he gave a dry laugh and muttered, "Unbelievable." I waited. My voice had barely carried above the heater's hum, but he'd heard me. I could feel the tension ripple through the cabin like static. "You really want to talk about this now?" he said. "Jesus, Serena, on the night before our wedding?" My throat tightened. "It's my money, Lucien, my inheritance." I deserve to know." He took his eyes off the road for a split second, long enough to glance at me with that familiar look, part disgust, part disbelief. "You act like I stole from you." "You did." That was the moment the temperature inside the car dropped faster than anything happening outside. He slammed his palm against the steering wheel. "I helped you. I've been carrying this damn relationship while you sit around analyzing spreadsheets. You think that money made you something?" I turned away, tears stinging my eyes. "That money was from my dad. He wanted me to have a safety net. You knew that." He jerked the car to the shoulder, the tires crunching against the snow. We skidded slightly before stopping. "Get out." I thought I misheard him. "What?" I said, "Get out." His voice was ice. "You want to accuse me? You want to disrespect me? Then go ahead. Get the hell out." The snow was coming down sideways now, thick flakes hammering the windshield. I stared at him, speechless. "You can get back in if you kneel and apologize," he added. "Right here, in the snow. Or you can walk your ungrateful ass home." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the only thing keeping me from screaming. "Are you serious? You think I won't leave you out here?" He leaned closer, his breath sharp with coffee and arrogance. "I used that money to teach you a lesson, bought Delilah a new car with it. You know Delilah, my assistant? Yeah, she's real grateful. Unlike you." I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I just looked at the ring on my finger. Gold, simple. The kind he said represented commitment over flash. Now it looked like a shackle, heavy and humiliating. I slid my phone from my coat pocket under the dash, pressed record, and placed it between my legs where he wouldn't notice. He pulled out his phone, dialed, and put it on speaker. "Hey, babe." Delilah's voice purred. Lucien grinned. "She finally asked about the money." I held my breath. "No way," she laughed. "Told her she had two choices, kneel or get out. I think she's about to go all Lifetime movie on me." They laughed like two kids who had just played a prank on the class nerd. It was the ugliest sound I'd ever heard. Lucien hung up, looked at me again. "Well?" I opened the door. The cold slapped me in the face, tore through my coat and jeans. Snow hit my boots, filled them before I could take 2 steps. I walked into the white nothing, no idea which direction was home. Behind me, the engine revved, then faded as his car disappeared into the storm. I kept walking. No sobbing. No falling to my knees in the snow like some rom-com martyr. I just whispered to myself, through chattering teeth, "Remember this moment. Don't ever forget who he really is." Every step felt heavier than the last. The snow didn't care about broken hearts or stolen money. It just kept falling. My fingers started to go numb. I wasn't sure if I'd make it to shelter or if I even cared anymore. The storm didn't take me. My boots were soaked through, my legs numb, and every breath burned. But something in me kept moving. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was spite. I wasn't going to let Lucian have the last word. Not like that. I couldn't see much ahead. Only the faint glow of what I prayed wasn't a mirage. Trees blurred past in ghostly shapes, and the wind roared like it wanted to drag me under. Each step was slower than the last, but that light, just one steady light, kept pulling me forward. By the time I reached the porch, my fingers were too stiff to knock. I scraped at the door, leaned my shoulder into the wood. It opened before I could fall through it. A woman in her late 50s stood there, holding a phone in one hand and a wool blanket in the other. She blinked at me like she wasn't sure I was real. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Harold, get some towels. Now." I barely heard her. Everything was white. Not the snow now, but inside my head. Then warmth. Then nothing. I came to on a couch next to a fire, wrapped in layers of flannel and someone's thick cardigan. The scent of wood smoke and peppermint tea hit me first, followed by the sound of a spoon tapping porcelain. "You're lucky you didn't lose your toes," the man, Harold, muttered as he set down a mug. His wife, Eileen, I'd learn later, sat down next to me, eyes kind but sharp. "You from around here, honey?" I nodded slowly, then lied. "Car broke down. Tried to walk." "Well, you've got grit," she said, folding her hands. "Most people wouldn't make it a mile in that." I wanted to thank her, to explain, but the shame clogged my throat. How do you tell strangers that your fiancé dumped you like garbage, that he spent your inheritance on another woman, then left you to freeze on the side of the road like a broken suitcase? I sipped the tea. It scalded a little, and I welcomed the pain. "Weren't you supposed to be somewhere?" Eileen asked gently. "Yeah," I said, voice flat. "My wedding." Harold's eyebrows rose, but neither of them pushed. Maybe they knew better than to ask, or maybe they'd seen enough people come through their doors carrying invisible wounds. I curled deeper into the blanket and stared at the flames. That ring, still on my finger, glinted like a mockery. I tugged at it once, twice, but it wouldn't come off. Too tight. Or maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind wouldn't let me rest. Lucian laughing. Delilah giggling. "She needs to learn a lesson." I should have seen this coming. The first time Lucian made a joke about my job, how cute it was that I worked in nonprofit finance, helping people who'd never helped me back. I thought he was just stressed. Then there were the times he'd roll his eyes when I talked about my dad, or when he'd say things like, "You wouldn't understand, baby. It's a business thing." He never wanted to merge finances. Said it was better to keep things simple. And I believed him, because love is about trust, right? I glanced at the phone on the table beside me. With shaking fingers, I unlocked it, scrolled to the voice recording, and pressed play. His voice filled the room like smoke. Thick. Toxic. She finally asked about the money. Told her to kneel or get out. Bought Delilah a car. She deserves it. Eileen must have heard it from the kitchen. She paused, then walked away without a word. I listened to it again, and again. Every time, the humiliation hit like a new slap. But beneath the shame, something else began to grow. A slow, burning clarity. That ring wasn't a symbol of love. It was a muzzle. That recording. It wasn't just proof. It was power. I stared at the phone, my fingers steady now. For the first time in hours, maybe days, I felt something solid under my feet, even if I was still curled up on someone else's couch. By dawn, the storm had calmed. Pale light crept in through the windows. I sat there watching it, knowing what I had to do. I couldn't walk down that aisle, not as someone who'd been humiliated and discarded, but I wasn't going to disappear quietly either. By the time I left Eileen and Harold's house, the snow had stopped. The roads were still covered, but the sky was starting to lighten. It wasn't morning light exactly, more like a warning glow, the kind that says everything's about to change. I called a ride. I told the driver I'd been stuck visiting an old friend out in the country. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and kept both hands on the wheel. I sat in the back seat, gripping my phone tight, Lucienne's voice still fresh in my ears from the recording I'd played on loop all night. We pulled up to my parents' place just after 7. The driveway was packed with the cars of relatives who'd flown in for the wedding. I could already picture them inside, drinking coffee, talking about seating charts and floral centerpieces. They had no idea I'd nearly died in the snow, or that their future son-in-law had left me there on purpose. The front door opened before I knocked. "There you are," my mother said, not even pausing before stepping aside. "We've been worried sick. You didn't answer a single call." I stepped in, boots dripping, hair tangled, coat damp with melted snow. "I lost signal," I mumbled. "It was a mess." She gave me a look, half concern, half appraisal. "You need to freshen up. People are starting to arrive." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What happened?" Just, "You look like a mess, and we have guests." In the kitchen, I caught the tail end of a conversation between my sister Solène and our Aunt Beverly. "Well, she does this," Solène said, keeping her voice low but not low enough. "She gets in these moods and makes everything about her. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she picked a fight with Lucien just for attention." My chest tightened. I didn't say a word. I just walked past them, my boots squeaking against the tile. They went silent when they saw me. My dad was at the table with a copy of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, skimming the sports section like it was any other Saturday. "Morning," he said without looking up. "You good now?" I gave him a nod. That seemed to satisfy him. He turned the page. I tried to pour myself some coffee, but my hands were still trembling. Not from the cold anymore, from something deeper. I felt it building under my ribs like pressure in a cracked pipe. At breakfast, everyone acted like nothing had happened. The talk was about who had arrived from Boston, who still needed a ride from the airport, what the photographer's ETA was. No one asked where Lucien was. No one asked why I wasn't with him. They just talked around me, like I was background noise. Like the bride wasn't supposed to take up space on her own wedding weekend. I sat there, silent, watching Solène giggle over something on her phone. My mother fussed over her place settings. My father refilled his mug and didn't even glance in my direction. I was invisible. Just like when I was a kid, when Solène would get praised for showing up to dinner with brushed hair while I was in the garage, sanding old furniture for my shop class. When I won a regional design competition in high school, and my parents missed the ceremony because Solène had a flute recital. It all came rushing back. I stood up too fast. My chair scraped loud against the hardwood. "I'm going to lie down," I said. No one stopped me. No one offered to come check on me. Upstairs, in my childhood bedroom, I shut the door and sat on the edge of the bed. The pink duvet was still there. The stuffed animals. The framed diploma from a college none of them had visited when I graduated. I opened the voice recording again. Lucien's voice played in the silence like a slow burn. "She needs to learn a lesson." And they were still downstairs, arranging napkins, laughing. Acting like I was the problem. I looked at the dress hanging from the closet door. Lace, ivory, flawless. I'd once imagined walking down the aisle in it, eyes locked on Lucien's, believing in every step. Now it looked like a costume. A lie. They didn't believe me. They never had. And yet, I didn't cry. I took off the ring. Finally. I had to twist it hard to get it past my knuckle, but I did. I held it in my palm and stared at it like it was some relic from a life I no longer belonged to. I placed it in a drawer. And then I said it out loud, just to make it real. If they won't stand with me, I'll stand alone. And that will be enough. By the time the sun came up, the house sounded like a machine running on autopilot, doors opening and closing, feet moving too quickly, coffee brewing nonstop. My family was buzzing with excitement, but I wasn't part of the rhythm. I was walking through the motions with a quiet countdown ticking in my chest. In the hallway, I heard my Aunt Clara telling a cousin how Lucien had handled the last-minute issues with such grace. She smiled like he was a hero for showing up. I passed by her on my way to the kitchen, and she gave me a wink. Nerves are normal, sweetheart. Cold feet before the big day? I nodded without answering. What would have been the point? I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady now, but my insides weren't. It felt like I was trapped inside someone else's life, a play I didn't audition for. Everywhere I turned, someone was fluffing a pillow, arranging flowers, or checking on the schedule. But no one checked on me. In the living room, the decorator was giving orders about the arch placement and floral arrangements. "He wants white peonies, right? That's what the groom requested?" someone asked. "The groom," my mother said with a soft smile, "has exquisite taste." She said it like it was a compliment. Like that alone made everything else irrelevant. I walked over to her. "Can we talk?" She glanced sideways at me, then at the people nearby. "Is it urgent? We've got less than 5 hours. This is not the time to unravel things." I stared at her for a second. "I was stranded in a snowstorm last night." She gave a tight smile and whispered, "I know, but you're here now. Just keep it together, please. Don't make a scene. People are watching." I didn't reply. I just stepped back, took a breath, and walked away. By noon, the house was full. Cousins, friends, neighbors, all dressed like this was a royal event. Solène stood in the hallway holding a clipboard, acting like she was the wedding planner. "Lucien's such a rock," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Sarah's lucky. He's put up with so much." I was standing close enough to hear. She wanted me to hear. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I found Lucien alone by the staircase, straightening his tie in the hallway mirror. He saw me in the reflection and gave a half smile. "Well, look who finally decided to look the part." I stepped closer. "Last night, do you even care what you did?" He shrugged. "You're here, aren't you? That's what matters. We're both grown-ups. Let's get through this." My voice lowered. "I have the recording, Lucien." His eyes narrowed just slightly. "You recorded me?" I said nothing. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You wouldn't. You don't have it in you. You'd never embarrass your precious family. You'd rather bite your tongue and smile through it, just like always." He was right about one thing. I had done that for far too long. I turned and left without saying another word. Upstairs, I found the wedding gown still hanging untouched in its garment bag. I unzipped it and ran my hand across the fabric. It was soft, beautiful, expensive, everything I thought I wanted. But now, it looked like something built to keep me quiet. A disguise. A symbol of surrender. I laid it across the bed and sat down beside it, staring at the delicate embroidery along the hem. I could almost hear the seamstress weeks ago telling me, "It's going to be perfect. You'll feel like royalty." Now I knew better. Lucien didn't want a wife. He wanted an accessory. My family didn't want a daughter with opinions. They wanted a picture-perfect scene to post online. They all preferred the performance over the person. But this dress? I wouldn't wear it to be his bride. No. I'd wear it to watch him fall apart. He thought he was in control. He had no idea what was coming. The clock in the foyer struck 3:30 as I stepped out of the car and into the golden haze of the venue. Soft music spilled through the open doors, and the air was thick with roses and expectation. My heels tapped against the marble floor like a slow drum roll, each step echoing louder than the last in my chest. The room hushed as I entered. Every eye turned toward me. Some smiled with awe. Some nodded with polite approval. Some leaned toward each other and whispered things I couldn't quite hear, but didn't need to. I knew the words. She's lucky to have him. She almost ruined it. Let's hope she behaves herself. I walked slowly, holding my head high. The gown they saw was ivory and laced and expensive, but beneath it was something sharper, something made of truth and quiet rage. Lucien was already in the center of the room, charming a circle of guests, shaking hands with his usual polished grin. He wore the kind of confidence that could make people forget how dangerous he really was. When he saw me, he broke away from the crowd and approached, arms out like he was welcoming a queen. "Finally," he said, drawing me into a stiff embrace. "You clean up well." Before I could reply, he leaned into my ear and whispered, "Smile, or I swear I'll make sure this day is the worst one of your life." I smiled, not for him, but for the people watching. And because that smile, right then, became my armor. He didn't know it yet, but every second I played his game was one more moment I was quietly disarming him. We walked together down the center aisle of the reception space as if nothing was wrong. My mother waved at me from her seat, beaming like she'd won something. My father gave a polite nod. Solène, dressed to kill in burgundy silk, leaned toward our cousin and muttered, "She's been moody all morning." Probably just nervous. They were all so invested in the illusion, they couldn't see what was unraveling right in front of them. I didn't belong to any of them anymore. At the altar, while the officiant gave his practiced welcome, I stood beside Lucien and let his presence wash over me like cold rain. He squeezed my hand too hard, his grip a quiet warning, a power play beneath a bouquet of hydrangeas. Behind us, the crowd of smiling faces looked on. I could feel the pressure of their gaze like a spotlight. They wanted a fairy tale, but I was done giving them stories that weren't true. After the rehearsal pause, I was ushered into the bridal suite to freshen up. A thin layer of sweat had collected at my collarbone, not from nerves, but from the heat of keeping so much inside. In the suite, I locked the door behind me. Silence. I walked to the mirror and stared. The woman looking back didn't seem fragile anymore. I reached into my clutch, pulled out my phone, and replayed the recording for the 5th time that day. Lucien's voice filled the room like a virus. "She needs to learn a lesson. I bought her a car, with her money. You should have seen her face." His laughter echoed through the room, venomous and sharp. My reflection didn't flinch. There were no more tears to shed. There was only clarity now. I sat down at the vanity and applied my makeup with deliberate care. Blush, mascara, lipstick. Each brushstroke was a line drawn in the sand. As I traced my lips, I whispered to myself, "They wanted a show. I'll give them one, just not the one they expect." Outside, the music began to swell, the prelude to a wedding that wasn't really a wedding at all. And as I stood, smoothed my gown, and opened the door, I no longer felt like a bride. I felt like a witness walking toward the stand. The music played softly, the kind you'd expect at a wedding, a blend of elegance and tradition meant to signal love and permanence. As I stepped into the light of the ceremony hall, holding my bouquet like it might keep me standing, I saw Lucien waiting. His smile was movie perfect, his tucks pressed, his stance confident, his charm dialed up for the audience. To everyone in that room, he looked like a man in love, but I knew better. Each footstep I took brought me closer to the altar, and closer to the moment I had rehearsed in my head more times than I could count. I could feel the recording device tucked beneath the petals in my bouquet. My fingers gripped it tighter than the stems. Lucien reached for my hand as I arrived beside him. His grip was firm, too firm. To the guests, it might have looked like devotion, but in reality, it was a message. Don't you dare! The officiant began his opening remarks, words about unity, commitment, forever. They floated around me like smoke. I barely heard them. What I did hear was Lucien, leaning in with a smile plastered to his face, murmuring just low enough, "You pull anything stupid, I swear, you'll wish I left you in that snowstorm." I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. He didn't know it yet, but his threats no longer landed the way they used to. When the officiant nodded toward him, Lucien launched into his vows like he'd been practicing for months. Maybe he had. They were poetic, scripted, just the right balance of romantic and respectful. People dabbed their eyes with napkins. My aunt mouthed, "Wow." My mother clasped her hands under her chin like she was watching a dream unfold. Lucien smiled at me, soft and confident. But between his charming lines, he leaned in once again and said, "You better say something sweet. You owe me that much." I turned to the crowd. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It had settled into a steady, focused rhythm, like a runner at the starting line, or maybe like a judge about to deliver a sentence. When it was my turn, I didn't speak right away. There was a silence, long enough to ripple through the chairs, long enough to stir unease. People shifted in their seats. The officiant cleared his throat. Lucien's fingers twitched on mine. I took a breath. Then I let go of his hand, and slowly, deliberately, I raised my bouquet to my lips and pressed a hidden button on the side of my phone. The room was quiet for a split second longer, until Lucien's voice filled the space, cold and unmistakable. She thought she'd trap me into marriage. Jokes on her. Laughter. Used her money to buy a brand new Lexus. You should have seen her face. She cried like a baby. Told her if she wanted to keep the wedding, she better get on her knees. Gasps. Not from just one person, from rows of people. Chairs creaked as guests turned to each other in disbelief. A few looked toward Lucien, then back to me, like they weren't sure who they were looking at anymore. Lucien's entire body went rigid, his jaw clenched, and then, like a switch flipped, he lunged toward me. "You stupid girl!" he spat under his breath, trying to yank the phone from my hand. The officiant stepped back. A cousin stood up. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. For the first time in all the years I'd known Lucien, I looked him in the eye. And I wasn't afraid. People were rising from their seats. My mother was frozen in place. My sister looked like someone had dumped a bucket of cold water over her. Lucien's parents were whispering frantically, their faces pale. "Get off me," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Lucien froze mid-reach, realizing too late how exposed he was. And that was when I took a single step back and turned to the crowd. "This is who he is," I said, my voice steady. "Not the man with the speeches and the wine glasses. The man behind closed doors. This is what I would have married." No one said a word. Lucien stood in place, rage turning his cheeks red, his mouth twitching like he wanted to scream, but didn't know which lie would save him this time. For one breathless second, the room held still. You could hear the echo of Lucien's voice fading from the speakers and the tiny mechanical click as the recording stopped. And in that silence, his mask cracked. His jaw clenched. His eyes darted from face to face. Then he snapped. "You're all being manipulated," he barked, stepping toward me like a man cornered. "She's unstable. Always has been. This is what she does. She twists things. She fakes things. A few guests gasped. Most just sat stunned. Some looked at me, then at him, uncertain who to believe. Lucien turned to the crowd, palms out like a preacher. "I gave her everything," he said, voice shaking, but not with emotion, just fury. "She wanted more, and when I said no, she cooked up this stunt." I stood motionless. "She's the gold digger here," he continued, tone rising. "She's the one who wanted my accounts, my name. Hell, she even told me she'd ruin me if I ever left." Then came the kicker. He pulled out his phone and held it up for everyone to see. "You all want proof?" His thumbs swiped quickly and he turned the screen toward the nearest guests. "I have an email sent from her account to some guy named Ethan. Look at the date. She wired him $5,000 for a weekend getaway." The room buzzed instantly. The word affair floated like a foul wind. I felt the air drain from my lungs. Solène stood up in the front row and crossed her arms. "I told you she always made things bigger than they were," she said, turning to our parents. "You never listened to me." My mother's gaze dropped to her lap. My father cleared his throat but didn't speak. It felt like a slow-motion landslide, everything I had just built crumbling beneath my feet. I looked at Lucien's phone. He held it like a weapon. "You created that," I whispered. My voice was low, but it didn't shake. "That's fake." "Oh, sure," he scoffed. "Now I'm a hacker too." "Please," a woman behind us murmured. "If she sent that money, why'd she expose him in the first place?" Someone else added, "Why air this at a wedding? Doesn't make sense unless she wanted attention." The pit in my stomach deepened. The edges of my vision blurred, the humiliation, the reversal. It was almost too much. Lucien saw it. He leaned closer, smirking. "Walk away now," he whispered, so only I could hear. "Call it even, or I'll bury you in lies so deep, even your own family won't dig you out." I stepped back, not from fear, but from needing air, needing space. My mind raced through every option, but nothing stuck. The weight of their stares, the possibility that they were believing him, it all bore down like a collapsing roof. I whispered, "Am I about to lose everything again?" And then, just as I started to turn away, another voice cut through the tension. "That's not the whole truth." Everyone turned. Maribel. She stood near the back of the room, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Her hair was pinned back, makeup flawless, but her voice carried more force than I'd ever heard from her. Lucien's body visibly stiffened. Maribel walked forward, heels clicking against the marble floor, until she stood between the guests and us. "I have the real messages," she said, pulling out her phone. "And trust me, they don't say what he thinks they do." Gasps rippled across the crowd. Lucien reached out toward her, but she stepped away. "This isn't about a getaway. It's about control, and lies, and fear, and I've had enough." Lucien's mouth opened, but no words came. As every eye turned to Maribel, I realized this wasn't just my fight anymore. His empire was about to collapse from within. Maribel didn't flinch. Her thumb hovered over the screen of her phone as she took one more breath, then tapped. The screen behind the altar flickered, then lit up. Lines of text filled the projection. Message threads, date-stamped bank transfers, screenshots of Lucien's own words. One message read, "She'll never see it coming. I've got her right where I want her." Another, "Let her think it's love. I just want that money. That inheritance will do more for me than she ever could." A gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by murmurs like a rising tide. I watched as people leaned toward each other, reading, squinting, whispering. Chairs creaked. The sound of someone's heels shifting nervously echoed like a ticking clock. Lucian stood frozen, eyes darting as if he could physically block the screen from their view, but it was too late. Maribel turned to him. Her voice was even, clear. "You used me. Lied to both of us. You said she was crazy, controlling. You never told me where the money came from or that it was hers." Lucien's face twisted. "You don't know what you're doing," he growled. "You're ruining everything." "No, Lucien," I said quietly. "You ruined it yourself." That's when he snapped. He lunged toward Maribel, fingers curled, teeth clenched, like a man unraveling in front of everyone. Two of my cousins instinctively stood between them, blocking his path. Someone shouted for security. A waiter dropped a tray. "You lying witch!" he bellowed. "You think you can humiliate me?" But he wasn't just shouting at her. He was shouting at the entire room, every person who now saw him not as the charming, successful fiancé, but as a cornered con man. Two men from the venue's staff grabbed his arms and held him back, their grip firm but controlled. Lucien twisted, still trying to reach for Maribel, or maybe just grasp onto what was left of his reputation. "It's all fake!" he screamed. "She doctored those screenshots. That money wasn't stolen, it was a gift. This is a setup." But no one moved. No one believed him anymore. The wedding hall had turned into a courtroom. The flowers, the candles, even the soft music still faintly playing in the background. It all felt surreal now, like a failed set design for a play that had fallen apart mid-performance. The audience, once smiling guests in pastel dresses and tailored suits, had become quiet jurors. I stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately, I removed the ring from my finger, the one he had slipped on during our engagement, bought with money I now knew wasn't his. I placed it on the table next to the altar. The sound of it hitting the wood was soft but final. "This wasn't love," I said aloud, my voice cutting through the silence. "It was theft. It was control. It was humiliation. And I'm done playing his game." Lucien tried to speak, but the guards wouldn't let him. I wasn't finished. "I won't wear chains anymore, especially ones I paid for myself." Then came the part I had quietly arranged days ago, on a hunch that Lucien might try something if cornered. From the back of the room, a woman in a navy suit stepped forward. She moved with calm confidence, a leather folio in hand. "This is Dana Whitmore, attorney," I said. "She's here on behalf of the bank and the court." Lucien's face drained of color. Dana opened the folio and removed a single sheet of paper, holding it up. "This document confirms that Lucien Gaudin's accounts have been frozen. Fraudulent activity tied to misappropriation of funds from a joint account, funds proven to belong solely to Ms. Aveline Rousseau, are under immediate investigation." The words fell heavy. Dana continued, "In addition, evidence submitted this morning has prompted an expedited audit of all transactions related to business accounts listed under Mr. Gaudin's name. Pending legal review, those funds are now frozen as well." Lucien stopped fighting. He didn't shout. He didn't beg. He just deflated, like a balloon that had finally lost the last of its air. For the first time since I met him, he looked afraid. Not angry, not smug, just afraid. Guests who once praised him for being so polished, so driven, now looked away. His sister, Solène, sat motionless, her arms crossed tight, face flushed with embarrassment. She didn't defend him this time. She didn't say a word. My mother blinked at me from across the room, but I didn't look away. She'd believed him over me. Let him insult me, isolate me, lie to my face. And for what? A fantasy of security? I didn't need her apology. Not now. Lucien's knees buckled, and he slumped, hands still bound at his sides. "Please," he whispered, voice cracking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I looked at him for what felt like the last time. "I did," I said. Next morning, The air felt strangely still. There were no more whispers, no music, no glass clinking in celebration. I returned to the venue, not because I had to, but because I needed to see it empty. The chairs were still there, pushed back in half-formed rows. The altar was bare, stripped of the white roses that had once seemed like a promise. Now only a faint scent of wilted petals lingered. The bouquet I'd clutched just yesterday was gone. In its place, scattered on the ground near where I'd dropped it, were a few bruised lilies, stepped on in the chaos. But what stayed behind was the paperwork. The cold, formal weight of justice printed in black ink. A folder rested on the side table where gifts were once stacked. It contained copies of asset freeze notices, bank disclosures, and a statement confirming that Lucien Godin was now the subject of a criminal fraud investigation. I walked slowly, heels echoing in the hollow room. The same aisle I had once envisioned as a path to a new chapter now felt like a corridor leading out of a nightmare. Every step felt heavier than it should have, but not because of grief. It was the weight of realization, of release. By noon, the news had already spread. I didn't need to scroll social media. The headlines found me. Local entrepreneur accused of financial fraud. Wedding day devolves into legal showdown. His picture was everywhere, smiling, poised, in photos he'd probably paid someone to edit. But now, even that smile looked dishonest. He'd been a man people admired, witty, charming, generous in all the ways that counted to strangers. But now, those same people who once praised him were the ones sharing articles with captions like, "I never liked him anyway." It was vindication, but it didn't bring peace. What echoed louder than the headlines were the last words I heard from him, kneeling on the floor, face streaked with sweat and disbelief, pleading for mercy. But not from me. From everyone. He still didn't see me as someone to answer to. Just an obstacle in the way of his escape. That stayed with me more than anything. Not his downfall, but his refusal to see me even as he crumbled. Later that day, my parents called. I let it ring twice before answering. I wasn't sure why. Maybe curiosity, maybe habit. My mother's voice was soft. "We didn't know. We thought he was good for you." "You didn't want to know," I said. "That's different." There was silence on the line. "We just wanted you to be happy." "No, you wanted me to be quiet. And happy looked like silence to you." My father said nothing. He never did when it mattered. My mother exhaled and said, "We're sorry." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. There was no satisfaction in watching people finally realize what they'd ignored. It didn't fix the hurt. It just made it visible. Solène didn't call, didn't text, nothing. I wasn't surprised. I imagined her curled up somewhere in shame or pride. I didn't care which. She was always better at acting like things didn't affect her than facing the truth. That night, I stood in front of the dresser in my room. I opened the top drawer, pulled out the ring. It still sparkled, untouched by everything it had come to symbolize. I held it in my palm for a long moment before setting it inside a small wooden box. I didn't slam it shut. I didn't cry. I just let it rest, like placing a memory where it belonged. Not on my hand, not on display, just away. "This chapter is closed," I whispered, to no one but myself. And for the first time, I meant it. In the days that followed, I started sorting through my finances. Slowly, carefully, I pieced together what was mine and what had been taken. The fraud reports helped. So did the frozen accounts. But rebuilding wasn't just about money, it was about trust. My trust in myself, my judgment, my ability to spot manipulation disguised as romance. I took walks in the morning, spoke to a lawyer about further action, met with a financial advisor. I even went back to work earlier than I expected, just to sit at my desk, breathe, and feel grounded again. It wasn't a clean feeling. Healing never is. There were still nights I woke up sweating, remembering how it felt to be thrown out of a car into a snowstorm, how I'd curled up in that freezing dark and still believed I might deserve it. But those nights became fewer. One morning, while making coffee, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. I didn't look heroic. I didn't look like a survivor. I just looked like me. Still here. Still standing. Maybe survival isn't about conquering. Maybe it's about refusing to collapse. Lucian's empire was gone. The lawsuits were just beginning. His name was now associated with shame, not success. And I didn't have to do a thing more to make it happen. He destroyed himself the moment he underestimated me. I didn't get the wedding I planned, but I got the justice I deserved. And for the first time in years, I could finally breathe. Maybe that's what survival really is. Not winning every battle, but refusing to kneel when the world tells you to.